There was a conviction recently of a terrorist, Boko Haram. I believe his name is Ismail. He was convicted for 20 years by a high court. He was a Boko Haram terrorist. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu was convicted, I think, last week, and his own conviction said life sentence. I don't understand why one terrorist is getting 20 years and the other is getting a life sentence if you're saying that. I think Pastor made a good point. There's this idea that justice is served differently.
So, in a shocking turn of events, a northern lawmaker, Bello El-Rufai, who represents Kaduna North in Nigeria's National Assembly, has called out Justice James Omotosho over what he describes as a double-faced judgment. This statement came during a plenary session and it has sparked massive conversations across the nation. El-Rufai, who is the son of former Kaduna Governor Malam Nasir El-Rufai, didn't hold back as he raised questions about how different the sentences are for two people involved in what he calls acts of terrorism. Now, to understand where he's coming from, let's look at the two cases in question. First, we have Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, who was sentenced to life imprisonment after being convicted on charges relating to his pro-secessionist activities. Whether you agree or disagree with his stance on Biafra, there's no denying that his case has become a symbol of the deep political divisions in Nigeria. People on both sides of the debate view his sentencing as a reflection of how the government deals with dissent. Some see it as a justified punishment for his actions, while others view it as politically motivated. On the other hand, we have Hussaini Ismail, a notorious Boko Haram terrorist. Now, Boko Haram is widely known for its terrorist activities, responsible for thousands of deaths and the displacement of countless families. Ismail, a convicted Boko Haram member, was sentenced to a relatively light 20 years in prison. This is where El-Rufai's frustration comes in. How is it that a man accused of leading and committing acts of extreme violence against the Nigerian state and its citizens receives 20 years in prison, while another individual, who according to many wasn't involved in anything as violent as Boko Haram's insurgency, gets a life sentence? It doesn't sit right with many Nigerians, including El-Rufai. He raised the point that both individuals are seen as threats to national security, yet their punishments are drastically different. What's troubling here, and what El-Rufai highlighted during the National Assembly session, is the perception that justice is not blind. Many Nigerians, and especially those in the South and Southeast, feel that the justice system is being weaponized to target certain groups based on political affiliation. They argue that Nnamdi Kanu's case is a reflection of the federal government's hardline stance on secessionist movements, and to some, his life sentence is a warning to others who may think of challenging the country's territorial integrity. But then, you have Ismail, a man associated with one of the deadliest terrorist organizations in Africa, who gets a sentence of just 20 years. This inconsistency has left many questioning. What is the standard for justice in Nigeria? And it's not just about the individuals. This is a broader issue about fairness and equality before the law. We've seen over the years how certain people seem to get a pass, depending on who they are, where they come from, or who they know. But is this justice, or is it something more insidious? Let's think about this. If you're someone on the streets, just trying to live your life without getting caught in a political or legal battle, the perception that the law is applied differently can be devastating. It erodes trust in the system, it breeds anger, and it can spark a cycle of resentment and division. The question El-Rufai is asking is not just about Kanu's life sentence or Ismail's lighter sentence. It's about whether Nigerians can ever trust their justice system again if they continue to see these kinds of disparities. Now, I know some of you might be saying, well, what does this have to do with me? But here's the thing. It has everything to do with you. The justice system in any country is supposed to be a foundation of fairness. But when people feel that it's being manipulated for political reasons, or that certain people are above the law, the entire country suffers. Look at what happened with the COVID-19 relief funds. People in positions of power were caught mismanaging those funds, yet some of them are still walking free while others face harsh sentences for crimes that seem far less severe. Now take a moment and ask yourself, how can we move forward as a nation if the law is not consistent for all of us? What kind of society are we building if people feel that the justice system is reserved for the rich, the powerful, or those in political favor? It's not just about the sentences given to Kanu and Ismail. It's about what it represents. If the law can treat two people who in theory are both seen as enemies of the state so differently, what does that say about the system as a whole? Why should any Nigerian trust a system that appears to apply the law based on political or personal connections rather than on the facts? Think about it. In any legal system, we're taught that there should be equality before the law. But when cases like this come up, it makes you question everything. It makes you wonder if those who hold power can manipulate the system to suit their own agenda. And it's not just politicians that are frustrated. Ordinary Nigerians are asking the same question. Why is there such a gap in sentencing? Why does one terrorist get a light sentence while another faces the harshest punishment? It feels like there's a different set of rules for different people. So, what does this mean for the future of Nigeria's justice system? Will we see reforms to ensure that everyone is treated equally under the law? Will Nnamdi Kanu's case prompt a reevaluation of how cases related to national security are handled? We don't know yet, but one thing is certain. The conversation around fairness and justice in Nigeria is far from over. And this is a crucial moment for Nigerians to come together and demand a more just and equal legal system. One that does not favor the powerful, but serves the interests of everyone equally. Now, as we've seen, El-Rufai's public indictment of Justice Omotosho highlights a deep issue, one that could resonate with millions of Nigerians who feel disconnected from the justice system. You see, justice isn't just about law and order. It's about trust. It's about the feeling that when something wrong happens, the law will be applied equally to everyone, regardless of their status, their political affiliations, or where they come from. Think about the people on the streets of Lagos, Kano, Enugu, or Sokoto. They're watching the headlines, reading the newspapers, hearing the stories. And the question they're asking is, why does justice seem to favor certain people over others? The issue of unequal sentencing, as El-Rufai highlighted, isn't just about Kanu or Ismail. It's a much broader concern about how justice is served in Nigeria. For many, it feels like justice is more about who you know than what you've done. If you have the right connections, the right political backing, or the right influence, then you might get a lighter sentence. But if you're from a marginalized group, like the Igbos in the southeast, or if you're seen as a threat to the status quo, then the full weight of the law might come crashing down on you. Now, let's take a moment to think about this from a more personal perspective. How would you feel if the law was applied unfairly to you? Imagine you were caught in the same circumstances as Nnamdi Kanu, facing a life sentence for actions that, in your mind, were about fighting for the rights of your people. And yet, someone who committed horrific acts of terrorism only gets 20 years in prison. How would you feel about that? It's no surprise that people are angry, frustrated, and in many cases, disillusioned with the system. And it's not just about personal feelings. This kind of injustice has long-term implications for a nation. If the citizens of a country begin to feel that the justice system is not on their side, that's when problems start to brew. When people lose faith in the law, that's when society starts to fracture. Now, as we move forward, let's think about what can be done. What can we as Nigerians do to ensure that the law serves everyone equally? It starts with transparency. The government and the justice system must show the people how decisions are being made. It's one thing to say that the law is equal for all, but it's another thing to demonstrate that equality in action. Imagine if we saw the same level of scrutiny and public discourse around other high-profile cases where every citizen, regardless of their political or social standing, is treated with the same fairness. We can't allow the conversation about fairness to stop at the cases of Kanu and Ismail. We need a complete overhaul of how the justice system operates to rebuild that trust. Let's not forget that justice isn't just about punishing people who do wrong. It's also about creating a system that prevents future wrongdoings. If the law is seen as a tool of oppression, then people will eventually lose their faith in the system and will turn to other methods of seeking justice. That's when you start seeing problems like protests, riots, and divisions that only hurt the nation as a whole. So, what's the solution? Accountability. It's time for the Nigerian government to step up and show that no one is above the law. Whether you're Nnamdi Kanu, a notorious terrorist, or an everyday Nigerian, you should be held to the same legal standards. That means no more selective sentencing. No more letting some people off easy while others face harsh penalties. It's time for real reforms in Nigeria's legal system. And this is something that must be done with immediacy and urgency. We need a justice system that reflects the values of fairness, equality, and transparency. But to do that, the people of Nigeria, every single one of us, must continue to push for change, speak up, and demand the kind of justice that works for everyone. So, what does that change look like? Well, it starts with an open public dialogue about the way the law is applied. We need to demand more transparency in court rulings, and we need to ensure that cases like these are not seen through the lens of political power or ethnic biases. We also need more people in positions of power to come forward, just like Rufi did, and question the way things are being handled. Accountability starts from the top, and it's time for the top to be held accountable. And for you, the viewer, you have a role to play in this as well. We all do. As citizens, we must hold our leaders accountable. We need to make our voices heard, whether it's through peaceful protests, calling out injustice on social media, or simply having honest conversations about the kind of country we want to live in. We need to ensure that the next generation inherits a Nigeria where the rule of law applies equally to all. So, if you've been watching this video and thinking about the state of justice in Nigeria, think about the kind of country you want to live in. Do you want to live in a country where people trust the justice system? Or do you want to live in a country where the law is seen as something that can be manipulated based on who you know or where you're from? This conversation is just beginning and I want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let's talk about it. What do you think needs to happen in order to create a more just Nigeria? What are your thoughts on the disparity in sentencing between Nnamdi Kanu and Hussaini Ismail? And if you haven't already, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more insightful discussions on Nigeria's political and social issues. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep it respectful in the comments, stay informed, and keep pushing for positive change. Nigeria deserves nothing less than fairness, justice, and equality for all.